Okay, so now we're doing the code um, for the concert. So here's our problem statement that we finished up. This is our flow chart. Where's my flow chart? Ah, I closed my flow chart. So I've done a lot ahead of time. Again, I've done all the constants. You should have no problem with that. Then all my accumulators and counters have to start with 0, so I did them there. And then I had to put zeros into all these because if I had, um, as I tested this and I did just orchestra sales 10, then my total would have been not a number because the rest of these would be um, null. So instead I put zeros in all of them, and now we can do some math for that. And then here we have ticket type, number of tickets. Those two things are blank places in memory. And then that assignment we're going to use for ticket rate, and then the math place we're going to store the total sales. These are the only blank places in memory we have. As you can see, as we go more and more sophisticated problems, less and less blank places in memory. And again, if you move on to CPT 167, you won't have any blank places in memory. All memory has to have a initialized value in it. Now let's go down to here. I also have the error flag of 0 because remember in our flow chart we don't have to do it because automatically everything starts with 0. Then I have my initialization of another customer, and then while another customer equals yes. I have my two inputs, and again, if I was doing this in a 50-minute video, I would start out by just having the while, having the um, another customer, how I get in, how do I get out. I would have tested it to see that I can get in and stay in. Then I would create these other ones. Now notice this here, this parse int. And the reason why we have to use parse int here is because when I'm adding the orc accum to the number of tickets is text because it's coming from a prompt. And that's a 0, but it would have made it 0, 1, 0 rather than 10, 0 plus 1, 0. So just remember that. Anytime we're going to be using a prompt for part of our accumulator or accumulating values from prompts, you have to use parse int to make sure that they are turned into a binary number. In fact, let me just go ahead and change this to 10. All right. And then I've created my first part. So here we had this if accumulator, then we had the accumulator and ticket rate. And if you remember, we did our flow chart, we added this math right here because it's important that we test that. And we should test it with the switch and the case to ensure that it all works correctly. So I also put in here the default value that we had that and that. That's directly from the flow chart. And I like to put that in when I test my first case so that if something goes wrong and it ends up with a bunch of zeros, I'll know what happened. So if I misspelled I type orchestra instead of orch, then this is going to pop out and let me know I typed in something wrong. If I didn't have it, it would just end up with a bunch of zeros and I would no idea. So it's always good to have that default there too when you're ready for your first test of your switch. So I save it and then I'll preview it and I'll say orchestra 10. And you can see 10, 500, 10 times 50. They owe me 500. I have one customer. All these parts are now working perfectly. And then I'll say yes, I'll go around one more time. So I can see now I have 20 tickets, 10 plus 10. The cash for orchestra is 1,000, but the person still only owes 500 because this is the second customer, 2 customers, and of course a total for 1,000. And then I'll say no. And we're ready to move on to our next piece. And again, to make my life easier, do a build and test methodology. I'll copy this. I'll come in here, make a space, and paste it in. And now all I have to do is make this for floor. So I'll go ahead and copy floor. And every place there's an orchestra, I'll do floor. So this just takes a second. Make sure you catch each one. And you can do a replace if you want, but that's kind of dangerous because it gets away from you and it'll overwrite too much stuff. So now that I've done the floor, I'll go ahead and put floor in here and I'll test it. Save it. And then preview it. Floor, 10 seats, 400, they're $40 each, 400, yes. And then I'll say, whoops, yes again, floor, 10. Now I got 20, so you can see everything is working. My accumulators, my counters, my math, everything is working perfectly. And then no. So again, this is your fastest way of doing things. Not typing in a ton of code and hoping for the best. All right, so I'm going to take a quick break here and fill in the rest. Okay, I've put in and I've tested everything. So everything now is working perfectly. So now what I want to do is, now this is working. And one of the things you could do, I'm going to save that. You may consider saying, okay, if it works at this point, let's go ahead and do a file, save as, and then do concert script B, and then save it. So this way, if I hose this thing up beyond belief, I can always go back to my original there. So what needs to come out in the, if you remember from our problem statement, well, that's the wrong thing. Where's my problem statement? From my problem statement, I just had this in there, and that's how it should be. Should only have the ticket rate and the accumulator. The rest of these need to come out. So I'm going to do a control, and you can, I'm going to go ahead and copy it. You can either get it, cut it out, or you can do this. And I kind of recommend you do this, commenting it out that way, and then turn it into your instructor that way. Then they know that, hey, you're coding this thing right. All right, so now we have to go below the loop. So here's the end while. Here's my done looping. I don't need this anymore because I'm going to do Control V, because this math shouldn't be done until the loop is over. So let's go ahead and leave that out there. And then I'm going to need to know these two things. So I'm going to come down here and move this out. And this is going to be output. And actually, these all can come over. Okay, and then I'll change this to a document write. And change this to a document write. So I'll copy this, Control C, Control V. Also, let's see, I need to, there's my customer count. This also needs to come out. So and I'll copy that, Control C, Control V, and then document write, Control C, Control V, and then I'll just need to add my BRs. And I think I'm ready to do a test. So the test is going to be Orch 10. All right, let's see if this works. So I'm going to go ahead and save it and then preview it. So I have Orch 10, you owe $500. Uh-oh, total cash for all seats. I didn't comment that out, I should have. Total cash, yeah, because that math is, I should have moved that math out. So let's go do okay, and then no. See, so that tells me I have a problem. So now I come back in here and go, okay, well, where is that? So this math, control, well, let's go ahead and comment it out. Copy this, and this should be here. A semicolon on that one. And then where is the alert for that? Total cash for all seats. And then I will get rid of that. Come down here, paste it in. Let's do this. Control C, Control V. All right, so now we fixed it. We're no longer going to be doing the math for all the money up there. We're not going to alert it there. And we're going to do the math here, and then we're going to output it there. So let's try this again. Orch 10, and order total is undefined 78. Let's see what we did wrong here. 78. Order total. So this shouldn't have come out. There we go. See, and that's how you build and test. All right, I try to do the best I can as I go through, but I can make mistakes, and it's good that you see them. Okay, so now orchestra 10, 500, yes, orchestra 10, 500. Then when I say no, it's going to tell me I had 2 customers. I did 20 orchestra seats. I got 1,000 for them, and the cash for total is 0. So Danger Will Robinson, that is not correct. So let's see why that. Because the total sales are in here. So that should have worked. So let's go ahead and put a semicolon here. Let's copy that. And let's put that here. And let's see if that works. It did, see, because this was up here, not down here. So now I save it and I preview it. Look at this, 12 minutes already, and I wrote most of the code beforehand. So orchestra, 10, 5, yes, orchestra, 10, UO, good. Then I say no. Boom. And now it's working perfectly. All right, so we need to do the same thing, and I'm going to pause this while I fix the rest of these. So I'm just going to do the same thing I did and do it over again. Okay, so I have gone ahead and did what I did with orchestra. I'm now done with floor, lower, upper. I've commented these out. I've put the math down here, and I've put the output down here as document writes. If we want to check it just to make sure, we can see that upper 10 O's, yes, upper 10 O's, and then no. And we can see that everything's working. They got 20 seats and all that. So everything's working fine now. So the last thing we need to do is put in our error checking and error trapping. So again, I wish I had not shut down the flowchart, but so what I want to do is the error checking and trapping has to be done inside the while, right? No sense doing it outside. So here, what we want to do is we want to say, well, if an error occurs, and we don't have to put the comment in there, we would start right here, and we'd say if, error flag equals 0. So we put that in parentheses. If that's true, then we do start no errors. So If there's no errors, we would customer count, figure out the order, and tell them that. And then also do this. So this is where we would end that error. And no errors. And then we'd say else start errors, and then end errors. And what do we want to do here? If you remember from our flow chart, the only thing we did here, reset the error flag. Error flag equals 0. So that's all we did. We do all this other stuff. If no error occurs, we just process normal. If an error occurs, then we don't process that, right? And we go back to the top and let them put in the correct answer. So let's try that. Let's save it. Now, I always put my error trapping the last thing I do. I want to make sure everything works first. Then I add that. This way, if it breaks, I know what the problem is. So let's see. Hold our breath. Okay, we'll preview it. So upper 10. Okay, so we didn't break that. Then we'll say yes. And we'll do dog 10. Uh-oh. Problem Will Robinson. And then we'll do upper 10 again. And what we want to make sure is that it should end up being 20, not 30, because the 10 we put in 3 times. And it should. So let's go no. And the only way we're going to know now is whether we get out. And you can see it only took 20. That 10 that we did that was dog, it didn't put it anywhere. It just ignored it. And we went around again for the second time around. So that's why it's important to do it in these steps. Get it working inside the loop. Make sure all the math is working inside the loop. Then move the math that shouldn't be in the loop outside of the loop, commenting out. So if we came in and it said 30, that 10 somehow got counted, then I'd have to start undoing these alerts to find out where that extra 10 came from. And that's why you want to keep these as comments. If you're doing this professionally, we certainly want to have all this junk in here commented out. But if you do that, your instructor will see that you're doing the build and test methodology, and they'll be just absolutely thrilled. I'm thrilled when I see all this, because it means you're doing it right. And if you're not doing it this way, then you're wasting your time, because you're probably spending twice as long as all the other students doing your result, because what you try to do is copy this, paste it here, and JavaScripticize it. And then you chased your tail for the next 3 days trying to find where all the errors were and why it's not working correctly. So don't let that be you. Build and test. Start with our problem statement, move to our flow chart. Flow chart looks different than the problem statement. That's okay. And because it's used for a different tool, we tested, everything works fine. Then we come back to our script and we do the same thing. We start out here, we build, we see if we can get into the loop, out of the loop. Then we start adding pieces and start adding our first case. And again, I would always recommend putting the default in before you test your first case, because this is going to tell you whether you have a problem with that. Other than that, it's going to show nothing, and then you're going to be kind of frustrated. So always add your default in with your first case, and then run it and make sure that everything works fine. All right, that's it for this video. On to the next problem.